the premiere of Mercury Retrograde. No, not just retrograde. Mercury and every part of Mercury, honestly. So we're about to have a lot of fun today, breaking down every Mercury sign. Please let me know if y'all hear me, see me down below in the comments, just so I know. Outside of that, what's good, everybody? I decided to hop in and do this masterclass. Today is Mercury Day, Mercury Hour. No, it's not Mercury Hour. Again, this is a very mercurial time. This has been Gemini season, and Gemini season has had a very strong emphasis on it that I feel like most Gemini seasons typically don't. And the reason why this is happening, besides the fact that there's all types of planets right now in Gemini, is that we specifically have Jupiter in Gemini. So if you've been noticing this in between of a lot of things happening all at once, right? Make sure you leave a like if there's been just a lot of things that have been going on, at least in this time frame. If you're watching it right now, if you're watching this later, hello, welcome, and I'm glad that you are here. Welcome to subscribe and all that good stuff. Check 10-4 indeed. But this whole Gemini season thus far has been this different brand of chaotic, and it really had me thinking about how Mercury actually works throughout all of astrology. It had me thinking about how the mind and the mental gymnastics that we all go through have their own specific energy signature and their own specific energetic vibe. So I wanted to come on today to break down this masterclass. We're going to be going through Mercury through astrology, all 12 signs, all the elements, all the vibes involved in that process, because the main thing that we think about when we think of Mercury, and I accidentally slipped saying it when we first opened up this live stream, is that we think of Mercury retrograde. And I think that is one of those very obviously prominent time frames in astrology. Happens 3 to 4 times a year, if you did not know. And whenever Mercury retrograde happens, we all either have to slow down or kind of sit down. And the idea behind that is that we have to rethink about what we've been dealing with. We have to rethink about the motion that we've been going on in the past X amount of time. And sometimes it's hard for us to see how far we've come with something or how much we've accomplished when it comes to a certain thing until there's a Mercury retrograde phase. And it's literally the universe's ebb and flow of us being like, hey, yo, you've been pushing out these ideas, sit down on them, think about it, and then you tap in and keep moving forward. So if that's what happens when it goes retrograde, what happens when it's just moving as it normally is, right? Well, Mercury is the sign that is everything that you think. It's the way that you think. I would almost go as far as to say that Mercury represents your brain. It represents the mind, the way that your mind has its own temperament. And we're going to break down each sign and element in just a second. But I suggest and highly recommend that you go and find your Mercury sign. I left a link down below in the description. If you were here a little bit earlier, make sure that you reset that. I apologize for being a little bit later than I initially scheduled, but this Gemini season has been so hectic. When I tell you I have done probably 10 different things just today, wearing 10 different hats, and still somehow managing to try to pop up and do this thing, it has been such a spread out, dispersed time frame. And this is really the nature of Mercury, because Mercury really just follows what it thinks. And so we're going to be kind of teaching some aspects about how to also center your mind based off of your Mercury sign. So I want to just make sure that this is something that you can use in practical application. Can you tell I have Mercury in an earth sign, huh? But this is essentially how that ends up going in this process. And Mercury is one of the only planetary energies that even from day one was considered a gender neutral planetary energy, which I thought was so interesting, because in terms of the modality of Mercury, Mercury is everything that's in between the actions that we do. Now, let me explain. I'm going to start off with something else. Let's say that you are about to go ahead with a partner of yours. Y'all really enjoy each other, and you're about to make the shaboink happen. Now, a lot of people think, oh, that's just Venus. Oh, that's just Mars. Like, Venus, that's what you like. Mars is what you're about to go do, right? But without Mercury, you wouldn't be able to like switch the modality of what it is that you're trying to do. The reason why Mercury retrograde impacts the collective as hard as it does is because it represents all of those in-betweens. Even at the fact that on the inside of your body, there's consistently little responses that are going throughout each other, telling you to continuously breathe, or to like knowing, like the body knowing, hey, you need some water now. Like, hey, the body knowing all these different messages. The messaging system of that is Mercury. So the more that you honestly start to in tune or tap in or know your Mercury sign, the easier it's going to be. Here's one of those key facts about Mercury in general, though. You cannot, and this is one of the few planets that this happens with, right? You cannot have Mercury in a sign that's too far away from your sun sign. As a matter of fact, there are plenty of people who have the same sun and Mercury sign in general. Canonically, the sun and Mercury, they're like homies, right? Because the sun is what gives us the light every day. The reason why we've been having so much intensity even recently is because we've been having this solar flare party going on for the last, I don't really know when. I try to keep out of that just because, like, honestly, that stressed me out after a certain amount of time. But like the solar energy that ends up happening obviously has an impact on Earth. Mercury goes through, listens to everybody's problems, listens to everything that people are saying, listens to what people, they think that, you want to know what? Mercury might be like, yo, I don't even like the thing that they said. And then it goes to tell the sun. And the sun's like, let's make sure that these energies impact the Earth and make these changes. Again, this is why that Mercury retrograde portion is so important. But the reason why I'm explaining this relationship is because your sun, let's say your sun sign's in Gemini, right? If you have a sun in Gemini, that means you can only have Mercury in the sign before it, which is Taurus. You can only have Mercury in Gemini itself, which means your sun and Gemini are in the same sign, or it can be in the sign after it. So it could be Mercury, you're a Gemini, but your Mercury is in Cancer, right? As a matter of fact, a lot of times when people guess your sign, if they don't get your rising and they don't get your moon, a lot of times people are actually trying to guess your Mercury sign because that's the way that you communicate with people. You know how many people never assume that I'm a Sagittarius ever? It's great. I love it. I think it's hilarious. But because people aren't sensing perhaps my Sag energy, especially if I'm explaining something or if I'm doing something that's business oriented, aka I have a Mercury in Capricorn. That's also why in terms of these videos and the way that I break down all this information is that I try to be as concise, real, and direct as possible. I do my best to be as practical about it, and I don't like to waste space. I don't like to waste time. I don't like to waste nobody else's time, and I hate when my time is wasted. So with that being said, these are the things that, as even my Mercury, I start to gravitate to, and I'm going to explain each Mercury in just a bit. But I at least had to explain this kind of preambling about it beforehand. Now, before we get a little bit deeper into this live stream, and I thank each one of y'all for being here, I do want to let you know for a limited time, right? Typically, I do my mini readings. Today, I want to really stick to the direct information. For today, I'm going to be doing the mini readings again for my new moons and full moons, and I have so many more projects coming up soon. It's been a really busy time, and I appreciate y'all for taking out the time with me in this process. But I ended up saying, you want to know what? Although I have things to do later on today, and although I know a lot of y'all used to the mini readings, I decided to put out a quick Mercury 10-minute mini reading out for a limited time only. If you're watching this later on afterward, if you book a reading with me, just make sure that you put in comment the word Mercury so I know you came from the Mercury Masterclass, and I'll sprinkle a little bit extra onto your reading specifically about Mercury completely free of charge. But The idea behind this Mercury energy is that once you know this, you begin to master how you think. You get to know, oh, this is the energetic of my thought process. Oh, this is why I think the way that I do. Oh, maybe this is why I react too quickly. Or maybe this is why it takes so long to think about these things. Mercury rules all of that. And it gets even deeper and it gets even more intricate because Mercury is literally the wind in between all the little pieces. So now that I explained a little bit of this Mercury, what does Mercury rule? What do we normally think about with this planet, right? So the planet Mercury, which is closest to the sun, I forgot to mention that. That's why they're best friends with the sun, you know? Anyway, Mercury, though, rules Gemini as well as Virgo. And in my personal and professional opinion, Mercury actually fully rules Virgo over Gemini because Mercury and Virgo, that sign is so pinpoint about anything that needs to be clear. Mercury and Virgo is like, hey, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but also I don't care. The information needs to get there. Mercury and Gemini is basically Mercury having more fun, right? But I think Mercury, if you even think to the mythological background of Mercury, that was Hermes in the Greek, the messenger of the gods, and in Egypt, ancient Kemet, it was Thoth. And so the concept, and if you ever get into that, there's like, you might have heard of Hermes Trismegistus, Emerald Tablet, that whole type of deal. And that's really trying to show you, like, they were really trying to emphasize the concept of the mind being like the flame that moves us all forward. That gets way deeper. I'm just trying to give you a little context before I tell you why your Mercury works the way it does. But the winged god of Hermes would go to each and every god and explain what was happening in between. As a matter of fact, a lot of times the guys didn't even know how to talk to one another. So they're like, Mercury, can you go talk to Zeus for me? I'm a little nervous. I know y'all are homies. Like, can you just like put in a good word for me? And Hermes would be like, cool. Instant teleportation, hop over there, hop back out. You know what I'm saying? The trace, great, absolutely. But the idea though behind Hermes, that he was doing all that communication. In terms of Thoth in the ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, whichever way you want to frame it, you know, Kemet, just so y'all know. But in terms of that, right, everyone went to him for everything because he was the keeper of all the knowledge. So anytime that there was something that was going on, he was the one leaning towards the knowledge, leaning towards thought. He was the one to create the concept of magic. The word is power. If you ever heard any of those concepts before, that's where that stems from. And as a matter of fact, I would highly recommend for those of y'all who are the deep scholars, you search up Robert Edward Grant and look up his background behind how he was in the pyramids and stuff like that. He ends up talking about that in depth a little bit more. And I've had the pleasure to meet him prior. And I could tell that he's one of those people who is really willing to go through for the sake of research, the sake of everything else. And I got to always give my kudos. He's like a real life Indiana Jones, but he's wearing a suit, you know. Respect, you know. Regardless, in terms of this Mercury aspect and how this is all working, you have to look at these two, or at least the two major gods and deities we can think of that are all about thought, learning, picking these things up. So how does this exist in you? Well, this is your mind, right? Yo, you met Grant? That's fire. Yeah, I've been in this circle for, I don't talk often about the extent of my own career in certain cases, but I have had the privilege to know my worth, I would say, in terms of the people I have been able to interact with thus far, and it's been a blessing. So this is part of why I even want to kind of explain these type of things to y'all. And anytime I sit here to give you some context about astrology, just know if I ever say anything dope, and you're like, well, yo, how'd you do that? It's because like I do my best to honor my own astrology. I do my best to honor the transits that end up coming through. And I also do my best to like tell y'all how these are going to go from a general scale. And what I love most specifically is when I get to read for each one of you individually, because that's when we really get to dive into everything at hand. Even when I explain all these Mercuries, there might be a part of you like, yo, man, I don't know if that part applies to me. But once I pick up your chart, I'm like, oh yeah, that's because your Mercury square Pluto and X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z. And it's like, oh, I never thought of it that way. That's my job, right? That's how I convey my Mercury. And so one more time, if anyone's looking to get that Mercury mini reading that's coming through, I think I'm only going to have it up for about a week max. But if you want to get that like actually in the inbox and everything, make sure that you check that out in that process. And we could tell how you share the medicine. I appreciate the love, yo. And there's never been a time that like I've sat here to try to tell y'all something that like I don't either work on myself or have tried myself, and if I haven't, I'll definitely like let y'all know in the process, because there is the way to really maximize your Mercury. This is actually the biggest key I can give you. The biggest way that you can maximize your Mercury in your life is by telling the truth. And I know it sounds simple, but the throat chakra has its connections to Mercury as well. Mercury does rule the throat chakra. And if you know anything about the chakra system, if any of these things are blocked off, energies are harder to move through properly. And we all, throughout our lives, have different chakras that get blocked off. We have different energy signatures that sometimes may disrupt us for a bit. It's okay if one of them feels blocked or you feel like there's a thing. That's part of life, right? That's a human experience. But what I can say is that by telling the truth and being in your truth and speaking your truth, and you might realize that a lot of my work is kind of centered behind this. And part of that is because the more that you get to express that part, the lighter your spirit becomes, right? The more that people are like willing to do that, or willing to like want to interact with you or know more about things. One thing that happens when it comes to like living in your truth, speaking your truth, or like trying to convey the knowledge from a pure, I would say almost scientific basis, the way that happens is you really get to see what happens when you get that weight off your shoulder. And the main concept of what I'm trying to say here is that if you lie to someone, or if you lie about something, you have to keep up with it. It stays on your body. You have to remember what that is. And like back when I was younger, and like before I got any type of like understanding who I was and this, that, and the third, I used to be more of like a scoundrel for sure, especially when I was at my younger age. And when I'm like 13, tripping out, I was like capping about everything on purpose, right? And in the latter years, from recovering from that mindset, which was taught to me by my culture, which was taught to me by some people who were just not good influences around, but that's also part of life. How do we navigate that in that process? But the way that has changed over time has led to me being able to like lead a career and lead a lifestyle to where I get to be in my truth and I get to impact y'all, and y'all get to also impact me, and we learn from each other, sword sharpen sword. And like, that's really what that's about. So the key part to me even trying to explain this Mercury, and I'm not saying that I have everything all together myself, but I do strive to really tap into those concepts in the process. And it makes it feel right when we have that conversation. And it's just cool to be able to, I guess, even be at the point to have this talk with y'all. So thank y'all for continuously supporting me in that process as we keep figuring this out. And now that I have rambled and Gemini and Mercury, actually Gemini sun is happening right now and the Virgo moon is happening right now. And I wanted to do that on this day so you can see real time how Mercury works, because you're going to see kind of the in-between of the Gemini brand of Gemini brand of Mercury when I'm saying certain things, and the Virgo side of Mercury when I say certain things. And I wanted y'all to kind of be able to really see how that works. So I think I picked the right day for it. Mercury day, Sun in Gemini, Moon in Virgo. Let's start to break down the details of each and every Mercury sign in this process. Appreciate y'all for being here one more time. So without further ado, let's break this thing down. I'm going to start off through each of the elements at hand. Now, mind you, one more time, the houses will make a difference. The aspects will make a difference. Any planets that are connected to this are going to make a difference, right? But I'm going to tell you the core part of each Mercury sign as we go about, right? I can tell you sit with your shadow so you can stand in your light authentically. Much love. I appreciate you for real. It's hard, but we make it work, you know? Yep. Mercury in 8th house, all about the truth. Yep. The throat chakra and in the sacral connection is also real. That's also a fact. Because if you don't speak your truth, then you start to be in your shame and you cannot create from there. And as someone who is constantly creating and constantly working in like art related things, I had to be like, I'm gonna be real. Like literally, I'm not. And this is what happens when you live in your Mercury and in your truth. If there's something that comes up, I'll be like, hey, yo, that don't sound right. And people respect the idea that like, hey, you're like speaking in that truth. But let's break this down and how you can start to apply this concept in your world and then move forward. Of course, somebody calling me as I start doing this, literally start talking this, someone starts calling me. It always happens. All right, but let's get into it. We're going to go through Mercury through fire first. If any of my lovely subscribers who watch this want to like help timestamp this for me, that is the greatest form of love. I'll just be like, thank y'all so much, because that is what my brain cannot do sometimes, especially after giving so much info. But we're going to start off with Mercury and fire right now. Mercury and fire, if you have Mercury in either Aries, Leo, or Sagittarius, right? All of the communication and the way that your mind works is that everything is geared off of the concept of passion. All of it. Off the concept of passion, off the concept of wanting to push something forward, and also not being afraid to take up space, to take up room. One thing about Mercury in fire is that when you have something to say, it doesn't matter if it changes the course of the entire event. It doesn't matter if it changes the course of what's going on in that space. If there's something that needs to be said at the core of your passion, you are going to say it. As Kendrick Lamar once said, sometimes you gotta pop out and show niggas out. But that's really what it is. Like, you just have to pop out. Hey, what's up? Hey, what's good? Is that what you said? Right? If you ever got pressed by somebody, right? I'm thinking of like, it's just some like old stuff back in the day where it's like, yo, like I can't find my phone. Hey, yo, where's my phone? And just someone running up to you be like, hey, yo, you take my phone? Hey, yo, you take my phone? Meanwhile, it's in their pocket the entire time. You might have Mercury and fire, right? So the reason why I'm explaining it in this capacity is because there is this need to push out the information. There is this need to express what's also on your heart, right? Usually with Mercury and fire people, there is this heart expression that ends up pushing forward, especially for Mercury and Leo. But this is just something to kind of point out in this regard. I also think that there's ads on this as well. So if you end up getting an ad and you're sitting there like, man, I don't know if I could skip this. There's like this mini reading that I ended up putting up, and like y'all should go check that out or get the full reading. Because honestly, the full reading is like, I've been going off. I ask anybody who actually has gotten a reading from me for real. Like this is all for the people. When I get to get specific with like who you are and tap in with that, whoo, man, this is so many insight. I love what I do, and it's a joy to work with all y'all in that process. And the ad's coming up in 5 seconds. So I'm going to start up right after that just to make sure this works in continuity. Bang. Anyway, we're back. Mercury in Aries. Mercury in Aries is really ready to go to war with what it is that they think. And what I mean by go to war with what it is that they think is that Mercury in Aries is someone who feels life at a very primal level and often will say the thing that they are starting to identify with immediately. Like, so they'll be like, okay, it's time to pop in. And there's this need to actively express that as soon as it starts to happen. So you ever like hit your arm on something or like your hand on like oh, I hit this leaf. 1 second. Aesthetic. Anyway, I hit this leaf, and you ever like accidentally tap something and your brain's just like, ow, even though it didn't hurt? Mercury in Aries is kind of like that about a lot of things, right? Because at the core part of every Mercury in Aries, this is someone who wants to learn who they are. So when they speak on things or talk about things, they typically want to relate it back to who they are. So if you're like, yo, I love baseball, and they're like, I don't really like baseball like that. I actually hate baseball. But what do I like as much as you like? That's baseball. Now, the problem is sometimes Mercury in Aries comes off straight out the bat. Sometimes Mercury in Aries comes straight out the bat. And then by the time by the time Mercury in Aries lets themselves like really comprehend what it is they say, people are already kind of mad. And so then Mercury in Aries is like, I was just trying to make a point. We was just talking out loud. Blah, 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 blah. And that's where we kind of get the competitive part to Mercury in Aries, I would say, right? The concept is Mercury in Aries is the warrior. And one thing about every Mercury in Aries as well is that they are willing to fight for their fellow person, especially if they're like with someone, like let's say they're on a sports team together, right? Mercury in Aries is the first one to cuss out the other team for like looking at their friend wrong. Mercury in Aries is so quick to temper, quote unquote, in certain scenarios, but typically you have to already know that's a part of who they are. Like if you know, for example, they hate when you don't close the door before you walk out, and like you always walk out without closing the door, one time they're going to probably get up and slam it behind you. I'm not going to lie. Look, and the reason why is because they're like, I told you that this was part of how I'm learning myself, the part of how I'm identifying with who I am. And even though that can change later on, this is where I'm at right now. This is where my passion's at. This is where my heart's at. And it will pop up to show you what it is that's going on if you can't understand them from a calm level. So that's something that I really want to explain about Mercury and Aries, right? And someone said that you have the stellium in Aries, Moon, Mercury, Mars, and Venus, and there's a rebel essence. And I do have to point that out. There is a rebel essence, and I appreciate y'all showing love about the readings, you know what I'm saying? But there is a rebel essence to it because they're learning who they are outside of the system of what everyone else is being told who they are. And that's really Mercury and Aries gift. And every Mercury and Aries can remind you who you are, no matter the circumstance. If you're having a terrible day and you're like, oh my God, I just don't know what I'm doing in the world, a Mercury and Aries will literally grab you by the collar and just be like, you're fucking perfect. You're great. You're just, right? Like they will 100% do that. I hope YouTube ain't hear me say that. It's okay. No, y'all, YouTube. Thanks for having me be a partner. It was bleeps, I swear. So the idea is, right? But then again, I'm in the Mercury and Aries essence. Oops. That's really what that is, right? So like, I hope to give y'all a little bit of concept in terms of Mercury and Aries and how that operates, but it's very actionable. It just wants to put forward what's on its mind, right? Okay, let's get to Mercury and Leo. Mercury and Leo. So for Mercury and Leo, if you have Mercury and Leo in your chart, Mercury and Leo they are proud, more so than I think Leos kind of are. Mercury and Leo have this sense of like astuteness to them, right? If you have any form of art medium as a Mercury and Leo, you're going to be the like art hoe of that thing. You'll be like, no. Painting in the Renaissance era was far superior than any other of the works coming out from 1980 into the 2010s. There's no way, like Mercury and Leo always has a very heart-fueled opinion on what it is that they care about, right? Another thing about Mercury and Leo is that they will probably like smother you with love, like mentally. Like if you know a Mercury and Leo, they will compliment you all the way down. They'll be like, oh my God, I love your hair and those shoes and that dress. Now on the other side of things, Mercury and Leo can also roast the ever-loving snot out you. I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk. I hate the way that you dress. But the reason why it's funny is because Mercury and Leo, no matter which way you look at it, is really inside of the heart of passion in terms of how they want to express that to you, right? So the thing about Mercury and Leo too is that they're going to be always leaning seemingly is a very important word here. They're always going to seemingly be leaning on the side of confidence, even if they're not a confident person, right? Mercury and Leo is someone who maybe behind closed doors, they're like, I don't know where I fit in the world. But anytime they're outside and interact with anybody, it's like, oh, me? Yeah, I'm just here, right? there's this certain suave that every Mercury and Leo kind of has, because they're just speaking from that passionate point. And anytime someone who has Mercury and Leo starts explaining what they're passionate about, you start to literally feel their heart emanate and you're drawn in. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but if you ever watch like a TED Talk about someone just explaining some like really deep part about love or their life, and you're just there like on the edge of your seat, like, wow, and that's how you felt about them, right? I'm like, just like the poetic form of love and the expression of love and that concept is very Mercury and Leo. I'm thinking honestly how like Romeo would be outside. If Romeo was a Mercury and Leo, I would not be surprised, because that old boy was outside the Juliet's crib. He knew all the risk. He knew everything else, but he said, I'm finish a boink no matter what. He's like, Juliet, beyond thy window breaks. Like, homie was really out here risking it for the biscuit. And that's kind of one of those concepts when it comes to the Mercury and Leo too, is that it really is going to kind of like zone in on the hunt for what it is that it also wants. So that's something to kind of point out. And now here's one thing I will say about Mercury and Leo. They may come off as very confident, but sometimes these people can have a tendency to lean insecure because they've been taught that their fire was too much. They were taught that when they like themselves, you can't like yourself that much. Now you're being conceited. Now you're being too cocky. Now you're overestimating this. And that's not necessarily where Mercury and Leo is registering that information, but that is the type of wound that can come with having Mercury and Leo. So my biggest suggestion is shine brighter. Shine brighter. If they don't want to see you for that, shine just a little bit brighter, you know? Just Google J-Lo and Ben Affleck both have Mercury and Leo, the drama. And if you literally watch them in their about to be divorced, they're like every picture of them is like, right? Like there's this movie I saw recently on Netflix that had J-Lo in it. And she was just like, she was fighting with this AI the entire time that was trying to help her save the world. And the entire time she was like, just Mercury and Leo, like, no, I'm going to be myself and you can't be a part of me. And like the whole movie. It's worth the watch, if anything, I guess. The orange drink, if you know, you know. But but this is the type of thing that's kind of going on with like Mercury and Leo. There is a proudness to things. There is a type of like push that comes from that in the process, right? So that's Mercury and Leo for y'all. Okay, now Mercury and Sagittarius. So if you have Mercury and Sagittarius, I'm going to say this right now. Every Mercury and Sag I know has a intrinsic clown that can't shut up. And I mean this with so much love. Mercury and Sag, y'all can talk about absolutely nothing. And I'm a Sag, so this is saying a lot. Mercury and Sag, y'all can talk circles around so many people's heads that you forget the plot of what it was that you were talking about. Now, the concept, the movie was called Atlas, by the way, the one with J-Lo. Shout out to the one homie in it that was low-key roasting her the whole time. Shout out to him. Anyway, but I'm bad with names for stuff on top of the head. I remember J-Lo because, like, let's be honest. Anyway, but what I can say, back to Mercury and Sag. Very Mercury and Sag moment just a second ago. Mercury and Sag is, and what I mean by the clown, I don't even mean it disrespectfully. I mean that it's like there's a goofball. They're at the core level, you want to know about everything. But even if you don't know about a topic, your tendency is to talk about it like you already know everything of what it is, right? And this is where Mercury and Sag can kind of get in trouble sometimes, because a Mercury and Sag could pull up and boast. And I think when it comes to boasting, that's all Mercury and fire, but Mercury and Sag especially, right? Because Mercury is at fall, or at its detriment, quote unquote, in Sag. And so with that being said, it's difficult to not kind of like have your foot in your mouth, because you're going to say the thing that you're philosophizing before the philosophy is done. And this is what gets Mercury and Sag in trouble. I'm giving y'all the keys if you have Mercury and Sag. If you have a philosophy, this is where you talk about it to like the close homies. That's when you talk about it to your best friends about it before you bring it out to everybody else. Because if you've ever been on TikTok and someone has had a take about something, and then you're looking at it or listening to it and you're like, honestly, I respect that everyone has their own opinion, but this is a terrible take, or this is a wild take. Now, granted, what happens with Mercury and Sag too is that through their conflicts with this, through their back and forth with this is how they actually gain so much intelligence. And they actually do gain a lot of wisdom from their interactions in this process. But I will say, when it comes to this Mercury and fire sign, you do have to like kind of tumble through and tumble through and tumble through. And that's when Mercury and Sag has this ability to hit an actual luck streak. And I know I get iffy about that word, but with Mercury and Sag, you can start to really philosophize into certain things. And then you will just find chances within that niche. You will find like little avenues that no one else is looking for, because you were willing to say that wild topic or that wild opinion that you had. And even if everyone else in the room was like, that's a horrible take, why would you say that? One person in the room is there in the back being like, they're an absolute genius. They're so smart. I need them to work for me. And like, that's really the finesse with Mercury and Sag. So on one note, it's like, hey, y'all be saying a little bit too much sometimes, but also that's what gets people to really be invested in your personality. There's a certain machismo, I would say, that kind of comes with having Mercury and Sag, no matter what background you come from in that regard. So I did want to explain that for Mercury and Sag. Hope that all made sense in that process. It's not a bad Mercury sign to have by any means, but it is one of those Mercury signs where you do have to like be mindful of what it is that you say. And my biggest suggestion for everyone that has Mercury and fire is like saying I'm sorry about something that comes to heart too fast is one of the biggest graces to the situations that you might put yourself in, or the situations where people might not understand you're coming from a very passionate place. Like literally just being able and willing and genuinely apologizing if you go a little bit too strong with your fire. That's something that gives Mercury and fire so much grace and respect from the common core, because they're like, oh, you realize that you said something that's a little bit too much. Thank you for apologizing. And now we can kind of work from that. So I do have to say that's like my biggest suggestion if you have Mercury and fire, because when at your best, passionate. Oh, tell us more. Oh, I love the way you love yourself. At its worst, it's like, screw you and your shoes and your mama and your it's like it's a whole different vibe. It's just battle rap. All battle rap is just Mercury and fire at that point. So that's my breakdown, at least for Mercury and fire. A little quick breakdown. If you got Mercury and fire, please let me know how you feel in the comments below. Technically, it's over to this side of me as I'm looking right now, because that's just how it goes. But appreciate y'all for rocking through. Cool. So that's Mercury and fire. Now, I hope you noticed something really important here. When I talked about Mercury and fire, I said, yee, right? It was very fast. I explained things super quick. I was really trying to show you the concept of Mercury being in fire. And now if you have Mercury in fire, you might have been like, oh my God, this whole time I was like following, and now you're like, talk faster. What are you doing? And the reason why it's funny to me is because Mercury and Earth, which is if you have Mercury in Taurus, if you have Mercury in Virgo, or if you have Mercury in Capricorn, right? The way that Mercury and Earth communicates is that they're very methodical. They're very slow. They try to really bring things into a practical nature behind whatever it is that they're saying. They do want you to kind of feel the gravity of what's being explained a little bit more than some of the other Mercury signs. Like, although they may at times be slower to quote unquote learn something, when a Mercury and Earth grasp a concept, they never forget it. And they implement it in other spaces. But they implement it in other spaces in that process. Thank you. I'm glad that you enjoyed the Chiron video. Let's go. But when it comes to the actual notion of having your Mercury and Earth, you need people to understand what it is you're saying a little bit more than the other signs, right? And the problem that happens with Mercury and Earth is that you might have the best idea in the world, but it takes you a little bit longer to explain. And if you're dealing with other Mercury signs or people with other energies, you might be like, hey, I found the cure to every ailment that ever exists. And you go in front of the people and you start reading it off the manuscript. And you're like, if you use the chemical compound of the parabola with the hypotenuse, someone's like, hurry up, what are you doing? That's what kind of like ends up giving a different type of, Mercury and Earth does not like being rushed. They do not like being rushed. Like, even when I do my live streams, I be like, I'm gonna be quick, I swear, and it'd be like 2 hours, right? Because there is more information to give. And it's not that it's just BS. I don't have fluff in between my videos outside of like an anecdote here and there. Like, it's very the entire time. But the concept is slow, method, explain, comprehend, digest the information. That's what Mercury and Earth does better than all the other signs. So Mercury and Taurus, right? If you have Mercury and Taurus, I'm going to be honest with y'all. Your teacher at a young age was giving you so much crap. You were probably taking the longest on the test, right? And they're like, everyone else finished their tests 30 minutes ago. And you're like, I swear to you, I'm going through everything. I'm just making sure that you're understanding what's going on. They're like, no, like you're like just a little bit behind. It's like, I'm not behind. Meanwhile, you could have had a perfect 100. This is why this is crazy. You could have a perfect 100 on it, right? But it's like, oh, it's being timed. We only have 30 minutes. It's like, maybe you needed an hour. Maybe you needed 45 minutes. It is not the fact that you are like too quote unquote slow for whatever. It's just on some like, you really want to make sure that answer is the most sound answer, right? You wanted to make sure that thought process you had was the best thought process that you could do out of a process of elimination. When you have Mercury and Taurus, you really do like want to think about all the angles. And there's certain downloads that come through from Mercury and Taurus that come through to them super slowly, right? If you've ever seen somebody and like, let's say you have a coworker, right? And you give them like a bit of advice, and they hear you when they first hear you say it, but they can't implement it immediately, right? But 2 weeks later, you see them again, and then they're doing that thing like completely flawlessly. That's Mercury and Taurus. Give yourself grace if you have Mercury and Taurus. Give yourself an extra bit of time if you have Mercury and Taurus, because you genuinely like have this slow and steady notion that can make you super intelligent. And maybe you're like, yo, I want to write a book. For most people, if they write a book, let's say it takes them a year. I'm just rounding. I'm making stuff up right now. I could be right. Who knows? But let's say it takes you a year, right? On this other side, Mercury and Taurus, it might take you 3 years. But by the time someone picks it up to read it, they're like, oh my gosh, every single idea, thought process, and form ended up coming through exactly the way that I anticipated. Who would have thought? Who would have thunk it? How would we have even figured that out in the first place? That's the power of Mercury and Taurus. So make sure that you do take your time with Mercury and Taurus. Y'all are brilliant, but it's just one of those things where like, everything's so fast paced. Oh, I have to keep up with everything else. Do not. If you have Mercury and Taurus, you are not a social media, I post every day type of person. You're not the type of person who's like, I gotta like make something up all the time. Don't do that. People are going to like the things that you make that last a longer time. Period. That's what every earth sign, but specifically for you, Mercury and Taurus. So I hope that helps and gives you a little bit of comfort and understanding in how that Mercury works for you. Okay, so now we're going to Mercury and Virgo. Mercury and Virgo, how does it feel to be Mercury's favorite? But how does it also feel to notice literally everything all the time, no matter what? I am so sorry for y'all sometimes. And not in any disrespectful way, but with Mercury and Virgo, it's like you can't help but see the crust on that person's eye. You can't help but to know that you're like, they haven't showered in the last 3 hours. You can tell by how the sweat is permeating off the brow. Like Mercury and Virgo, y'all are so like in tune with the most random of stuff. like y'all are so just like, this light that's hitting his face right now, it's just the slightest bit too bright. If he just knocked it back by 5%, it'd be absolutely perfect. Mercury and Virgo, y'all can't help but to see the places where y'all can help. And what sucks is that with Mercury and Virgo, y'all are typically right. Therefore, no one wants to listen to you. And then that becomes even more of a frustration because they do the same exact thing 3 days later. And they'll be like, yeah, like it's like I made it up. It's like I've come to this conclusion. And you're like, yo, I literally told you that the first day. The minute that it happened, I told you what that was. I told you that's what it was going to be. That is living life with Mercury and Virgo. Giving L from Death Note, yo, Vic, you are not wrong. Because, so for anyone who's not familiar, L is essentially a detective who's going after this megalomaniac dude in this show, right? And the idea behind it is that anytime something happens, he'll be like, this pencil moves, right? I have a roll of paper towels right here. Like having Mercury and Virgo is a difference of you being like, I love this paper towel roll right here. And then like coming back and it's just like this. And you're like, someone's touched this. And everyone's like, how did you know? Because Mercury and Virgo is so meticulous. This is an Earth thing in general, but they're so meticulous in how things are going, how things are moving. And so L, the detective, was always like right about things, but it would like kind of also backfire on him. They're like, hey, just do this. They're like, no, we can't. Right. I meant to tell you there's an ad, but my bad. Regardless, with Mercury and Virgo specifically, this is one of those circumstances to where it's like you can pinpoint the truth behind things. So Mercury and Virgo, you typically want to know the facts. And if you're not someone who's like fact oriented fully, even if you're into something as far as like botanicals, or if you're into the facts of like herbs and healing modalities and stuff, although modern, quote unquote, modern science will be like, no, there's no way that these ancient things that have been existing before we had technology could even help. No, there's no way. Like all that stuff. Mercury and Virgo will do the due diligence to learn from the books. They'll do their own research. They'll check out their own, all the podcasts. They'll look at all the information. And then they have this beautiful ability to like compare, contrast, and delete. There's nothing else I can say. They can compare, contrast, and delete. And it's almost instantaneous, right? So Mercury and Virgo always have a very specific brand of taste, especially in terms of aesthetic, especially in terms of like fabric and random stuff like that, because they just like know what it is that they want. And since Mercury is like in this rulership here, it's like, yo, here's all the information. Here's all the tea. What you do with the tea is up to you. So Mercury and Virgo always has the tea on everybody. They always know an extra little detail just based off of like vibe than anybody else will all the time. So Mercury and Virgo, I see y'all. Y'all see me, and that's just how I go, you know. But that's how Mercury and Virgo kind of works in terms of that, and I hope that gives y'all some context. Okay, so Mercury and Capricorn, right? Mercury and Capricorn is one of those signs that, like, they're always looking at the bigger scale project at hand. I was gonna say picture, but Mercury and Sag is more big picture. But Mercury and Capricorn is like, how do we optimize all the systems so everything always works, right? I have Mercury and Capricorn. If you realize, I'm a decently effective communicator, I'd say, most of the time when I choose to be honest. But it's one of those things where, like, with Mercury and Capricorn, it's like about genuinely just like getting to the core root of that. The problem that comes through sometimes with Mercury and Capricorn is that since it's so enterprising, since it's so kind of caught into the larger scale of what's happening, we have the tendency that we can sound cold. Like, we really can sound cold to people sometimes, or like there might be something that happens and everyone could be in this emotional rut, and a Mercury and Capricorn be like, you do know that this is not the first time in history that this has ever happened. And everyone's like, yo, what? Like, calm down. And it's like, I mean, it's true. And Mercury and Capricorn has this, the reason why it's quote unquote cold is that Saturnian influence, but it's like, there's a tendency to just be more concise and dry, I would say. And that's not a bad thing. I think, like, a lot of people enjoy dry humor. A lot of people enjoy things where it's like a little bit more like direct in terms of how that expression is. But the tendency is you got to kind of watch out as a Mercury and Capricorn when you're kind of getting too businessy, or when you're getting a little too caught up in a legacy that other people can't see yet. And so what I always suggest in terms of having Mercury and Capricorn is just like find the system that works best for you and implement the changes that you'd want to see versus trying to enforce the changes that you want to see. Mercury and Capricorn, by nature, you're going to be a leader if you really trust in yourself. If you trust in yourself and you believe and think that you believe in yourself, Mercury and Capricorn, you can go 10 times further than most people, right? But it really does have to do with like not forcing that legacy part. You can't force that. Right. When I was younger, like 2 years ago, my biggest thing I was tripping about, I was like, I need to give everybody the best astrology ever, and I need to just give them like all at one time, and it needs to be perfect. And when it's perfect, people will know and they'll respect me as a professional and blah 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 blah. And then it's like with Mercury and Capricorn, it's like no, you got to also keep in mind where your sun's at. You got to also keep in mind where like your other energy is, because the minute that you stop trying to kind of like control the narrative of what that's supposed to look like is the minute that people actually come through to respect you for what you actually are and who you actually are. So it's a really interesting dichotomy with Mercury and Capricorn, to where it's like when you can really hone in on the main core part of your truth and not forget the people along the way, that's when Mercury and Capricorn does become the better leader in the process. That's why there's a reason why like I do my best to like, if I have the time, I literally interact with y'all in like real time. For people who have been like following me or have known me for a minute, like it's just one of those circumstances to where the more that you're willing to put your mind forth for the greater cause of the collective, the more people are also going to kind of want to gravitate to you in that process. You get what I'm saying? So that's coming through in terms of that, right? Caught up in legacy others can't see yet. Mac Ultra Capricorn Stellium. And it's wild because, you know, RIP Mac Miller, but like in the terms of even like to use part of his story in that process, Mac always talked about how, and I'm getting chills a little bit, but Mac always talked about how hard he was on himself, right? But then again, he's blessed so many people across so many genres, across every race, every creed, every like color, etc. And he was just genuinely just wanting to work on himself or have other people like find their own power. And so this is kind of also that notion of that. But then again, pressure, other things like that can also form. That's the reason why you can't rest a legacy. And this is one of those concepts to where it's like even past, and he did pass on, but like we really do consider him one of the greats. You know what I'm saying? I have a lot of words for most white rappers. I would never say anything against Mac. Ever. Like, you know what I'm saying? like I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, as someone who's like formed from hip hop, I have nothing bad to say about him at all. You know what I mean? But that's because he worked that legacy. He did hop into those genres. He did do the due diligence. He did do the work. That's kind of the concept. And that's what Mercury and Capricorn both respects and tries to push out into the world in that process. Thank you for giving that example, because that is an excellent example. One more time, RIP to Mac. But let's lean this a little bit more, right? Let's get a little bit more spicy. Let's talk about the airheads. You know what I'm saying? Let's lighten it up a little bit. So we have Mercury and air, right? And Mercury and air, y'all are, oh wait, no, fault. I forgot. I went slow for a second because I was a Mercury and Taurus. Let me tap into that Mercury and air for a second. 1 second. Ooh. Someone texted me. Wow. That's Mercury and air. If you have a Mercury and air sign, get off your phone. Mercury and air, y'all are literally the chattiest talk. I love to hear myself talk. I love to hear myself think out loud. Why did you get upset about this idea? I have another idea over here. Actually, I don't believe in that idea I said about a bit ago. I was just testing you to see like what your idea was. So I was just talking, if you have Mercury and air, you just yap. But then again, that's where your genius comes from. Because in every mercurial yap, there's always at least one crazy gem that you can't get nowhere else. And so a lot of people, when you get to Mercury and here's the thing, if you have Mercury in air, you can feel yourself not being able to stop talking. And I think that's one thing I've always found interesting when I talk about that. It's like, and it's like, what are you even saying? And the minute that you ask most Mercury and airs what they're saying, they'll stop. The airflow will just end for a second and like, I don't know. Anyway, and they'll just go into another thing. I love Mercury and air. I love my fellow yappers when it comes to a lot of things, but that's one of those things to kind of point out in that process. Now, this also includes with Mercury and air, y'all are experts. You can walk through a mall with thousands of people and you'll pick up on so many conversations by accident. Like Mercury and air, I don't know how y'all do that. Like you'll literally be hearing 10 conversations at one time and you won't even notice that you're processing it. But the next thing that you'll say will somehow be an amalgamation of all 10 of those random thoughts that you said at one time. And it's like, where did that come from? You're like, I don't know. Like, that's the whole idea. We be channeling sometimes. Yes, like Mercury and air is like channeling the wind. If I do say so, like Mercury and air just channels whatever is going on in the general like wind, the gust. You're just like, oh yeah, I just caught wind at this. That's also why if you have Mercury and air, you are addicted to social media. I hate to break it to you, but you are, especially Twitter, because you're just like, what are people thinking? What are people saying? And one thing I have to point out with Mercury and air, sometimes it's hard for you to know what you think because Mercury and air is so social. You're like, oh, wait, I think what everyone else is thinking. But when you remove yourself from that, you're like, oh, I actually don't believe that. That's one thing with Mercury and air that I do want to point out. And it's not like a detriment. It's not like it's like the worst thing in the world, but it is something to mention because if you're like moving through life and the whole time you're like, oh, I'm just like, you know, like I believe in this thing and I believe in this thing. And then you move to a different city and you just hear the opposite and you're like, I believe in this now. And just like, whoa, right? So the main thing when I do suggest for Mercury and air in general is that like pay attention to what you listen to. That's my biggest suggestion before you even get into anything else. Pay attention to what you listen to. Because if you listen and listen, I love like trap music. I love Future. I can't deny it. You know what I'm saying? There's certain music that just bump, you know, I don't like Travis Scott as a person, but his music bump too, you know what I'm saying? Like, but the problem with Mercury and air is that you might start hearing what they're saying, even subconsciously, and you're just like, I should have 20 girlfriends. You're right, future. Or you might be listening to some Travis Scott and it's like, oh, yeah. Wow. You want to know what? It's not a real party until everyone starts completely raging out and having a terrible time. It's like if you start listening too deeply into like what those things are, you might start to think that way. And it's not that you're becoming that thought, but you're going to like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like you want to like be in the know of what's going on. Now, at your best, y'all just be like, screw everybody else. I'm just going to talk from where I'm coming from. And that's Mercury and air at its finest. But I'm going to break down how this works in each of the signs. So let's get this down, right? So Mercury and Gemini. Sheesh. But when it comes to Mercury and Gemini, so y'all are Mercury's second favorite. Hit the brakes here. No, it's not. But you are Mercury's other home sign, right? And when it comes to Mercury and Gemini, we are experiencing Mercury and Gemini right now. Have I showed up yet? No. Have you showed up in your life? I'm sure you haven't. This is like this, and it's about to be on the sun, which is why I did this masterclass to begin with, because Mercury in Gemini is so separated. Also Aquarius is kind of so separated from what they're saying. Like, they're again, this is the duality of Gemini season. If you've been noticing this Gemini season, the distinct highs, lows, highs, lows, lows, highs, highs, lows. That's how Mercury and Gemini thinks about everything, not just a little bit, everything, right? So, like you could talk to someone with Mercury and Gemini and be like, hey, yo, you like ice cream? They'll be like, nah, I don't like ice cream, but I love sherbet and frozen yogurt is really good. Actually, I do like ice cream now I think about it. There's this one ice cream, kind of tastes like frozen yogurt, but like also I don't like how it tastes with the texture. So I think we should just go get sherbet instead. And you're like, what the fuck just happened, right? There's this like ability to kind of just like jump to each thing and then formulate what's going on. Also, Mercury and Gemini, I'm gonna let you know right now, this is what most air signs, but specifically y'all, if you're talking to someone with Mercury and Gemini, they are not emotionally connected to the stuff that they are saying. I need to say this one more time. Mercury and Gemini are not emotionally connected to the stuff that they're saying. They're just really expressing whatever it is that just popped through. They are very much like mirrors of their environment in terms of how they speak about the things that they do, about their ideas, about the topics that they bring up, right? If I was around a Mercury and Gemini long enough, just in general, they would start talking to everybody about astrology. I wouldn't even have to mention astrology to them. They'll just be like, oh, that's an astrologer. Then they'll be thinking, astrology, that's kind of like astronomy, but like it's like a science, but like it's not a science because a lot of people think it's fake, but like I think it's real. But like the people always talk about Geminis. I'm like, what? That's Mercury and Gemini's thoughts all the time. So this can also sometimes show up as that quote unquote the stereotype a lot of people like to give Gemini. That could show up as the quote unquote two-faced part to like Gemini, is that they're not two-faced, but they're like, oh my God. Like a Gemini could look at you and be like, hey, you are the best partner I ever had. And you're also my worst relationship. And they'll be like, what? The other person will be like, I don't get what you mean. And then the Mercury Gemini is like, because the duality of the situation is both of those things could be true. And at the end of the day, Mercury and Gemini kind of exists on the both things could be true, which means that for Mercury and Gemini, the more that you stick to your truth, the more that people gravitate towards your word. And Mercury and Gemini, if you're leaning more towards the drama side of things, if you're leaning more towards the like the reality TV like oomph of everything, you're going to be mad dramatic. Like this is just like whatever you're kind of ingesting in terms of information is how you're going to act and how you're going to want to act, right? Mercury and Gemini is the type to go to watch a superhero movie, and by the time they leave the movie, they're just like, I'm going to save the world. Because I can. And then 2 hours later, they're going to be like, you want to know what? I kind of hate everybody. Like, this is just the dichotomy of that Mercury and Gemini. And so you have to understand that even with Mercury and Gemini, your mind can change. Your mind can change. And I don't think you should judge yourself for your mind changing. But be wary and understand that you're going to have to communicate as well when your minds change, because not everybody is as mutable as you in terms of your thoughts and ideas. But also this makes you a genius in so many different fields. Like Mercury and Gemini is able to like really tap into like having way different fields, different art mediums, different like jobs, modalities, like friend groups. Mercury and Gemini can get in where they fit in just about anywhere. And that's really the gift that comes in with Mercury and Gemini, that you're not judging people based off what they say. You're judging people based off of who they are. And you're not even judging them. At a certain point, you're just kind of like, yeah, that's my one friend. They're like, isn't that person a terrible person? But yeah, they're kind of cool sometimes, but sometimes they're not. But I like talking to them. It's like, huh? They're not emotionally attached to these conversations, you know? Just something to point out in terms of that. I hope that gives a little bit of context into Mercury and Gemini in general, right? So Mercury and Libra. Mercury and Libra is the like premier relationship oriented Mercury in terms of Mercury and Libra can adamantly disagree with you, but they'll find some way to like butter up how much they don't like it. Like it could be like a Mercury and Libra could look at me and be like, yo, I hate the shirt you have on. In their head, like in their core, they could be like, I hate the shirt you wear, right? And I could just be wearing a shirt, chilling, and they'll be like, have you ever considered another color? And you'll be like, what? Oh yeah, for your shirt. Like, oh. No, I hadn't thought about that. But like, I think that if you considered wearing a different shade of this color, then it would really bring out your eyes in a different way. Meanwhile, what they're actually saying to you is, I hate everything about your shirt. Take it off right now. I'll buy you something else if I have to. Now, it's funny because every time you point this out to anyone with Mercury and Libra, they're like, I would never think such cruel things. And it's like, yo, Venus is a savage. Why do we be forgetting Venus as a entity was always a savage. So it's funny when it shows up in this Libran and this Venusian principle of Mercury and Libra. Now, Mercury and Libra also have the capacity to be the best partners. And one thing with Mercury and Libra is they kind of don't care about who you are. They care about how you treat other people. So like if you're somebody who treats people well and have like a general positive social vibe in the things that you do, Mercury and Libra will find a way to kind of meet in the middle with you, right? They might be like, I don't like the fact that you ride motorcycles, but you're really good to like the people who are around you. Like, let's hang out. It's like, oh, okay, right? Mercury and Libra, another thing too, y'all are the biggest of flirts ever. And even if you're not trying to flirt, the person on the other side is there being like, they want to spend the rest of their life with me. And you're just over there being like, I should have just told them I didn't like their shirt the entire time. But Mercury and Libra, I love y'all. It's just funny when I think about it, because Mercury and Libra really knows how to like, you could be like, this is the worst paper towel roll ever, and a Mercury and Libra will be like, stop talking bad about this paper towel. Don't you see that in each part of this is a different part of art, and art is in everything that we see. And if we have a better relationship with art, we have a better relationship with the world. And they're right. But this is the funny part is that like Mercury and Libra's like connection to that is always like this. It's kind of like a rose tinted glasses that they force themselves to put on before they say something sometimes. So if you really have to get like the real truth out of a Mercury and Libra, you might have to poke at them a little bit. Like, nah, what you actually think? Like, no, like, what do you really mean by that? And then they'll tell you the other side of it. And you're like, oh. And then they look at you and they're like, this is why I gave you the nice version. This is why I said, wow, like here's a different suggestion, right? There's a lot of, what show was I watching? It was, it was a show Queer Eye, right? And it was basically just like, they were doing like the makeovers for people. And the way that they would like, I love the way that like the gay homies be roasting people's like aesthetic. Yo, like they would go into their cribs They would go into Happy Pride Month, by the way, to y'all. But they would go into like the crib, right? And they'd be like, "Oh my God, what happened with all of this?" And then the person will explain whatever, and they're like, "I see what you're doing there. We can." And they're like, we can, let's make some adjustments. Are you comfortable if we make some adjustments? That's Mercury and Libra. They're trying their best to kind of like pull back. They are fashion bullies, but they're right. They're right. And that's the thing about it too, is that they're like, okay, I don't want to be a bully about this. Mercury and Aries would just be like, this is trash. And they'll just walk away. Mercury and Libra is like, we can fix this. We can. Like, I love it about them, but that's where they're coming from. And if you ever need real fashion advice, ask a Mercury and Libra. They'll let you know. They'll tell you. They will absolutely tell you. Yes. So that's Mercury and Libra, just kind of like all together in that quick nutshell. I hope that has made sense for everybody. So moving forward, right? We have Mercury in Aquarius. Word. So Mercury in Aquarius, like y'all are so above the BS in a certain way, right? Hope the stream is going well. Yes, it is. Pisces is coming up soon. No worries. But with Mercury in Aquarius, right? Mercury in Aquarius is so caught up in the idea that they're above it. It is not to even be condescending. Mercury in Aquarius, his mind is literally in the clouds, like actually in the clouds. So a lot of times people are like, Mercury in Aquarius, like, can you be regular? And they're like, I see everyone for what they are. We're all individuals inhabiting this planet. And because of that, we are as insignificant as we are significant. Therefore, my unconventional manner can actually be the difference that it can take to change the world. And you're looking at them like, what did you say? Then a Mercury in Aquarius would be like, nothing. And then I'll just be silent. Mercury in Aquarius is one of the funniest Mercury signs to me in general, because it's like they always are 3 steps ahead of the curve and also somehow 3 steps behind the curve. I don't know how, I don't know why, but Mercury in Aquarius is like the most innovative person that you can think of. And they're also like so caught up in like a 1920s mindset for one reason or another. It's a really interesting part of like, they kind of pull on the futurism that comes from Aquarius, but they're also really caught up on older innovation that happened before. So if you, for example, you meet a Mercury in Aquarius and they like planes, right? They like planes, they like jets, they like helicopters, they like flying apparatuses, right? A Mercury in Aquarius will sit there and be like, in the future, we need twin turbo jets, stealth mode. Like the X-Men jet is what I'm thinking of, honestly. They're like, we need one of those jets. And then they'll stop and be like, Amelia Earhart had it right. And so did the Wright brothers. And you're like, what? Because Mercury in Aquarius is like, their thought process is futuristic, but it's also ironically out of time. And so that's why a lot of Mercury in Aquarius can come off as just being awkward, or they'll say something every once in a while and people are just like, what? Because their mindset on its own is literally just traveling across timelines. Just traveling across, doing as it goes. Like if you know Mercury in Aquarius, they're posting a meme from Facebook, like from 2003. Like it's new, you know? And like they are so just, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure one of my closest friends, he had Mercury in Aquarius. Now there's this one song, I can't remember what song it was, but like it had to come out probably 4 or 5 years before that, to the point where it was Up All Night by Drake. That's what it was. It was Up All Night by Drake. And it came out literally, at the time, it came out like 5 years ago. Like everybody knew that song, whether you liked him or not. It was just one of those songs, right? And then I remember just one day, and I'm definitely the headphones always type of guy, right? It's all, you know, I know my music stuff clearly. And one day he comes up to me, he's like, bro. I'm like, what's up? He's like, I found something. I'm like, what's good? He's like, I found this song, bro. I'm like, tell me more, say less, what's up? And then I think he puts like the headphone on my head or like puts it on my ears or something. And I'm listening to the song and I'm like, oh, this is my jump. Yo, I haven't heard this in forever. And he's like, bro, this song's crazy. I'm like, you never heard this before? He was like, nah. I was like, this came out 4 or 5 years ago. He's like, yeah, but I just found it right now. And I like it a lot. And I'm like, dope. And he's like, bro, this song is fire. I'm like, yeah, I know. I've heard this before. He's like, nah, it's fire right now. And it was like, he even in that conversation, like try to like pull me in the timeline of just like, yeah, like right here, right now. I'm like, it doesn't hit the same. Like, I appreciate it. I love the song to this day to whatever extent, but like, that's just how it goes. Interpretations of these signs are spot on. That's because I know people with all of these signs. I have spent time with every sign in the zodiac at some point. Unless they're like years prior, but I'm sure still somehow connected with them one way or another. The reason why it's so interesting though with Mercury and Aquarius is that like they really are innovative, but they really do admire nostalgia. I don't know if my homegirl has this Mercury and I don't know if she has Mercury and Aquarius, but she's one of those people who her aesthetic is very of the past, yet she is very of the future. And a lot of people are like, yo, it looks like you're from like a different time period. And I think she has Mercury in Aquarius, if I'm not mistaken. And she's like, no, I'm here. I'm actually pretty like modern in all the stuff that I do. But for some reason, everyone thinks I'm from like the 60s or like I'm from like another time zone. That's having Mercury in Aquarius. Because like whatever you're talking about. And Mercury in Aquarius, the last part, Mercury in Aquarius also has the most like in terms of the difference between, let's say, like polyamory and like also monogamy, right? Every Mercury in Aquarius you meet has a completely different view on how that goes, and they actively go about that view. So it's like there's some Mercury in Aquarius you meet, and they're just like, I want to live in a house of 30 people, and we're all together. And it's dope because we like care. And that could work for them, straight up. And on the other side of things, there's other people that are like Mercury and Aquarius, and they're like, I am one person and one person only. I only have one soulmate in this life, and it is who I'm with. And there is nothing that can change that. I'm like, I don't know why, but these are just things that I have noticed about Mercury and Aquarius. So I hope that y'all have been enjoying this over the clouds view of Mercury and Aquarius in that process. But that's really how that goes. But very much the innovator, very much the rebel, and always wanted to push the ball forward while still admiring those parts of the past that were innovative then. That's really what I want to say to that. Okay, cool. Now we're on to our final Mercury sign. And make sure if y'all wanted to get that mini reading time frame, right? If y'all want to get that mini reading coming through, I'm not having this link up forever. This is a special promo for today. This is to make sure that y'all had the best time with this class, really got to know what's going on. And I love getting to interpret for each and one of y'all specifically because the insights that you think I'm giving y'all now, triple immediately. So I have no chart in front of me. This is all off the top of my head. Like there's no notes. There's no background. I do appreciate astrology as an oral tradition. And I do my best to also still honor the other part, but this is, Anyway, to continue on moving forward, let us speak upon the Mercury and water signs. Now, Mercury and water, when you all start to speak to people, there's always a emotional charge underneath for one reason or another. This can often confuse people because you can say, yes, everything's fine, yet somehow everything does not feel fine. I am very confused. How is everything fine? Yet, it doesn't feel fine. Mercury and water, no matter what y'all do, if you feel a type of way, you can't lie about it. Your literal energy is just like on the people, right? You can sit there and talk to someone and they can hurt your feelings about anything, so to speak. Just I'm giving you a concept. And Mercury and water will just sit there and be like, you want to know what? It's okay. I forgive you. And you're like, huh? Like, yeah, I forgive you. It doesn't sound like you forgive me. No, I do. Like Mercury. Like Mercury and water is like so involved in the emotional world in their communication that like it doesn't get shown. Now here's the other side of Mercury in water, right? Mercury and water, they're talking to someone that they fancy. They have a crush on them, right? Mercury and water sitting there, they thinking they're playing it mad cool. They think they're playing it mad cool. They're talking to somebody, they're like, yeah, so how about the movies at 7? And they're like, is that what you want to do? And the Mercury water is just like, I meant like how at 7 would you like to spend some time? It's like no matter how it goes, you have to have like the emotive connection or else people almost can't even hear you. And I think that's always really interesting. It's like, because if you have Mercury and water, you could say something that's really like practical and everyone be like, yeah, it's whatever. And as soon as you say anything that's even slightly emotionally charged, everyone in the room is like, oh shoot, oh, they feel that way. Okay, let's get things moving, right? So he's having too much fun. Yes, you just need to start making these skits into where you play all the parts. Hey, if anyone could pull it off, it's probably me. But am I going to do it? No. I like to have fun with things, you know this. But appreciate the idea though. That is something that I should probably actually do, to be honest. But getting into the water sign portions of things, right? I just haven't because I don't want to copy everybody who's like doing the skits part. You know what I'm saying? It's life though. But when it gets to the water portion of things, right? If you have Mercury in Cancer, if you have Mercury in Scorpio, or if you have Mercury in Pisces, you all have your Mercury in water. Now, Mercury in water specifically, this is the ability to psychically connect through your words as long as your words are chosen correctly, right? And I told y'all at the beginning that speaking through your truth is one of those things that's so important for all of us in terms of this. But I want to say it goes threefold for Mercury and water, because Mercury and water, sometimes you feel a bunch of different things. You might feel happy, sad, and upset all at the same time. You might feel like there's a bunch of things that are going on, but like the way that you speak on things, you'll know. You ever like go up to somebody and you're like, hey man, like how's your day going? They're like, I'm having a great day. How are you doing? You're just like, what? Like, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Just like, huh? And vice versa. Here's my suggestion to you, Mercury and water. Hey man, how you doing? How's your day? It's awful. I'm having a terrible day. Actually, nothing's good. And everyone's like, well, but what's wrong? It's like, well, let me explain. Let me break. Do you have the time? I can tell you. And low key, that's how Mercury and water be making the realest of friends. I'm not gonna lie. Initially, Mercury and water, when y'all are younger, y'all can kind of get into a lot of like relationships and friendships where y'all are kind of like equally hating on something, especially like first growing up. So it's like, hey yo, we both don't like Susie for real. Yeah, nah, Susie thinks she's too popular. Yeah, she's too popular for us. Yeah, we don't like her, dog. No, we don't like her, right? It's something about the like water portion to where it's like, oh, we both feel this way. Let's connect, right? And this can lead to, again, great communications, great relationships, or this could also lead to like, how did we all get here? Like, so this is something that I do just want to tell you, just to keep that in mind in that process, that like you need to keep your emotional processes in mind, because that's how you master your own mind in that vein. Okay, so let me get into each and every one of them in that process, right? So when it comes to Mercury and water, let's say you have Mercury in Cancer. Let's start with Mercury in Cancer, right? Mercury in Cancer is going to be so sought on making sure that they feel comfortable in the environments that they're in, right? And this can extend out to other people, but Mercury in Cancer, it kind of starts with themselves first. Like if Mercury in Cancer can't see themselves kind of like helping to take care of a situation, they kind of don't want to be there. Like if there's already like a bunch of different caretakers that are involved, the Mercury in Cancer will be like, well, who else needs help? Who else needs my ability to know what everyone else is feeling? Who else needs my ability to know like what everyone else is like thinking underneath the things that they're saying to me? Because I know. Now on the flip side of Mercury and Cancer, they're just like, you'll never understand how I feel. It's like, you could just tell me. They're like, no. They're like, you'll never understand how much strife it is to deal with my emotions. It's like, I mean, you could talk about it and they're like, no. And then they might at the end of the things be like, listen, okay, all right, fine. You were right. You're right. Okay, I do feel things. And I think things, and I'm not saying this to like make fun of. This is literally the energetic of like how that like works oftentimes. Because with Mercury and Cancer, like there's this really strong attachment to, again, the instinctual portions of the dark side of the moon, or like basically there's this ability to really feel into everyone else's scenario that sometimes it's hard to recognize your own. And it's honestly through that catharsis. Maybe you do have to cry, or maybe you do have to call your friend, or maybe you do have to talk to a family member, maybe you do have to talk to your partner. And it's kind of in those like strong discussions, when it is in those emotional things, when you don't even know what you're fully saying, that actually sharpens the mind. So when you step into everything else, you're a little bit more comfortable, right? Let's say you have a bad day at work. You have to get that off. Like, you have to literally like tell somebody about it, or you have to like write something down about it. But there's this need to have that emotive expression that you can't just like take from yourself. That's one thing I really have to say when it comes to Mercury and Cancer. Now, Mercury and Cancer, y'all make like the best people. If y'all are like about to go to like, if y'all have a group of friends, y'all trying to go to an event, y'all trying to get something together, y'all trying to get like a cookout going, a Mercury and Cancer is the GOAT. Like they will like be like, hey, yo, this person, they can't eat gluten. Make sure there's a gluten-free option. An entire plate. Screw that. Hey, you're really good at setting tables. I need you to set all the tables. Hey, yo, and they almost get Mercury and Capricorn when it's about like something that's like important for everybody else. But like if you have a Thanksgiving dinner that always gets pulled off, if you have like a good family outing, like let's say like you have a bunch of people in your family that do different events, the one that like pulls it off every time and gets everyone together, ask them for their birthday. There's something with Cancer in their chart. I guarantee you. They probably have Mercury and Cancer. And that's why I wanted to kind of break this down in this process, because at the end of the day, Mercury and Cancer does want to nurture through words. So if you need some words of affirmation, if you're feeling down about yourself, a Mercury and Cancer will like sit there and detail every like modicum of feeling that you ever made them feel. And then you'll like just give it back to you. You'll be like, I never knew that you felt this way. They'll be like, everyone feels this way about you. And you'll be like, wow. My life's changed forever. That's the power that Mercury and Cancer has on the other side of things. So I hope that gives a little bit of context. Obviously, this plays out differently in everyone's chart, but like just purely Mercury and Cancer, that is a lot of the times how that can work in that process. Okay, I know we have a couple Mercury and Scorpios in here who have been staring at me this whole time being like, when are you reading my sign? I'm waiting. Oh, I love y'all. Okay, so Mercury and Scorpio, y'all are the passionate ones. Yes, y'all are a little off the rocker. I'm not going to sit here past y'all. Y'all are stupidly passionate about the things that you think about. And to be so transparent, y'all have a very obsessive thought pattern behind the things that you enjoy. Now, this is what most people with Scorpio energy in general, but specifically Mercury and Scorpio, if there's like a topic, I'll give you this. If there's an emotional reason to like fully develop into something, you will take that emotion and use your mind and willpower and just be so sharply focused into it. Let's say that you're dealing with somebody, and when you're in high school, just like you're young, you're figuring out things, you're about to go to college, right? And someone's talking to you and they're like, hey, what do you think you're going to go to school? What do you think you're going to do after school? And you're like, oh, honestly, I really want to be a surgeon. I've always wanted to be a surgeon. You know, like I've been talking about this since whatever. I want to help save people. And someone looks at you, they're like, and you're like, what are you laughing at? They're like, you can never be one of those. And you're like, I can't. They're like, no, you can never do something like that. You're too dumb. Or it's just something stupid. You get my point. And then the Mercury Scorpio, like, oh, okay, all right. And like, Mercury and Scorpio will take that moment where they're like, their mind was just like challenged and just like spat on. In 20 years from them, when they're winning their award for being the best surgeon in the world and for saving the most lives possible, Mercury and Scorpio at the end of their speech, will, before they think whatever they believe in, will be like, and screw you for saying I couldn't do it. Anyway, bye. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate the reward. Okay. Mercury and Scorpio knows how to hold a grudge proper. And when they utilize that grudge properly and they forget the idea of it being about that one person and they just are like, yo, like I need this, like Mercury and Scorpio kind of need a push and pull, right? Like Mercury Scorpio is also the type of person to where it's like, let's say you're talking to someone again, y'all about to get done, you're about to get, and they're talking themselves up. And they're like, hey, listen here. I just want to tell you, I know some things. And if you let me do some things, I got all the moves. And you're there just like, everybody says that. Whatever. You would never. You can't even do that. That Mercury Scorpio about, okay. And then the next day when you're calling them back and being like, hey, can you come over again sometime soon? That'd be really cool. Like you should, like tonight, like right now, like the next day. And then Mercury Scorpio is there just like, I thought you said I wasn't going to do nothing. And at that point, the Mercury and Scorpio can choose to go about their business. They can go ahead and do that. Or they can just be like, no, I'm okay because you doubted me. And like, it's just that, like that need to really stay into that emotional world that they have. And like, there's this emotional locus of control that Scorpio has to where it's like, specifically Mercury and Scorpio, to where it's like, they know how to like really dig deeply into the nuances of a lot of things, but they kind of need to be supported in that. Now, granted, another thing that can show up with Mercury and Scorpio every once in a while is that sometimes they get like a little paranoid about certain things. And it's in that like paranoia where honestly, and I'm going to just be honest with you, because if you work on this properly, and this is something that's difficult, and a lot of people deal with this in general, but I do see this with Mercury and Scorpio, that oomph of paranoia that comes in, sometimes that's kind of like the universe's, a Scorpio energy's rendition of trying to show you what you actually care about. So a lot of times, like when you're like in a panic, like, oh my God, what if I don't do this there? What if I don't like blah, 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 blah. And then next thing you know, you just like slowly just be like, oh, like this is just showing me I care about the situation. Like, why was I over there looking over and lurking, seeing what they were doing with the next person that they were with? And it's like, oh, I thought I didn't care, but I actually do. And Mercury and Scorpio, I promise you, as soon as you like come into an emotional truth with yourself, you come to peace with it. Like you come to peace with it. Like the minute that like you could be like literally looking up something for like 30 days, the same exact thing. And the minute that you come across, you're just like, oh, it's because I care. You're like, oh, and next thing you know, you're free. It's so weird, but it's something I've noticed with Mercury and Scorpio. It's like once you like get to that point and you really just like admit that other side of things to yourself, you then get to operate and move that in whatever direction that you so choose. So I just want to kind of remind you of the power in that process, because that is how that kind of works in terms of Mercury and Scorpio. So I hope that helps in that process. And last, but certainly not least, we have Mercury in Pisces. Mercury in Pisces, you are so into the outermost of all of the things. You like the most beautiful things. You like the most grand of things. You like special occasions. You like non-special occasions. You like occasions that are non-special as long as there's love involved. The real thing that I'm trying to say about Mercury and Pisces, if you are listening with Mercury and Pisces, you love the accent in which I have right now is rich with tones and frequencies to bring art and love to life. Like that's every Mercury and Pisces thinks like that. Like it might be a different voice, it might be a different vibe, but Mercury and Pisces are like the literal like lovers of lovers of lovers. Like they just want to like, they want to see or feel the love that's behind the layers of everything, right? You could tell Mercury and Pisces about some of the worst things ever. And they'll just be like, wow, I'm so glad you guys loved each other. It's like, did you not miss all the other stuff that I said? It's like, yeah, but y'all were in love. That's the most powerful stuff. And again, they're kind of right. But with Mercury and Pisces, like their ability to kind of like be in the midst of all of what's true and still find that extra dimensional layer of like what's happening on a grander scale can often have people get taken aback, right? Unless you're one of the like artsy spiritualist type people, and a lot of people with Mercury and Pisces are very spiritual because they have a notion for magic that's different than most people in general. The reason why this is because Mercury and Pisces is one of the few Mercury signs that's actually allowed to play in their imaginations throughout their entire life. And that's how they actually make things come true in the real world. So if you have Mercury and Pisces, you low-key have a cheat code, because as long as you're like really just honoring the spirit and you're honoring the like the love and the feelings and the higher frequencies, you can literally just like cruise through life in a way that's very different than a lot of the other Mercuries. Now, mind you, with Mercury and Pisces, this is also you starting to come into certain contingency points with other scenarios and situations. What do I mean by this? This means that like if you're a Mercury and Pisces and you start talking to a Mercury and Virgo, a Mercury and Virgo will probably win almost every time. Why am I saying it like that? Well, if you have Mercury and Pisces, you can be so in the grandeur that you can miss out. You can miss out on the things that are kind of right in front of you, right? So if you're like, let's say like you're a Mercury and Pisces, you're like, we're going to have a party. And let's say you're on a committee. You're the Mercury and Pisces. There's a Mercury and Virgo on the squad. Mercury and Virgo is going to make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And you're there being like, I want to make sure the postcard's pretty. Now, I'm not saying this to be any form of condescending. There is like literally magic in the idea that like your mind is in the space. And I need to point that out to y'all because there's like a literal magic of like making levity into things that other signs cannot do. So this is where I wanted to point this out. Mercury and Pisces is the dreamer. It's the lover. It's the like, I dreamt of a romance and then the next day it came through. Or like you're like, wow, I'm so obsessed with this celebrity for some reason. I put them on my wall and now the next partner you have looks exactly like them. Like every feature they have is the exact same. Like their tonality, their voice, the way they look. You didn't even know that the other person existed, but you somehow manifested them in just by you being like, So if you know anybody that's like they're just like a complete sweetheart, I'm gonna be really honest with you. There's two-way Mercury and Pisces usually shows up, and one of them is a complete sweetheart who's like, I want to write you a love poem. Oh, the Mercury and Pisces realize there was a butterfly on my shirt the entire time. They're like, it says love, and there's a butterfly. They ignored the burning rose. They're just like, wow, love, butterfly. Like it's so. This is where. On one end, it's all like sunshine and rainbows. On the other end of Mercury and Pisces, it's a little bit darker. I'll be honest with you, it's a little bit darker. And the reason why is because it's still pulling on the outside notions of what the world exists. Because on the opposite of love is hate, even though they are the same thing at the end of the day. But like Mercury and Pisces can also, these are the people that you can see who are like, maybe more on like I'm just using this as a concept, but like on the emo scene or like the goth-ish type of scene, because they're like, they know how much hurt has kind of gone on. And so they're showing their love and their honor to even that one thing. So like, I'm not just saying like they're all the gumdrops and rainbows. Sometimes they like things that are a little bit dark. They like things that are a little bit moody and mysterious, but so does everyone that has Mercury in a water sign. They want the feeling. They want to just feel the stuff. They want to feel like they're alive, man. Like they're alive, like they're doing stuff, man. But like the idea with Mercury and Pisces truly is that they are the biggest dreamers. They are some of the most like open about love people. If you're ever in a slump about like a relationship, or if you're ever in a slump about like how you be perceived, you talk to a Mercury and Pisces and you're going to be like, I can do anything. Thanks. And by the time you say thanks to them, they disappeared. And you're like, what? You're like, is that apparition? And the craziest part is you'll bring it up to the Mercury and Pisces the next day and be like, yo, thanks for the advice that you gave me yesterday. Like, it really changed everything. And then the Mercury and Pisces will look you dead in your eye and be like, what advice? Y'all be channeling. Like, there'll be just every once in a while, it's just like the universe will just come through a Mercury and Pisces and like give you the most like pure thing ever. And then the next day they'll be like, huh? What do you even mean? Y'all be spitting. I appreciate y'all. But that's basically my quick rundown, I would say, in terms of this masterclass of Mercury. I don't want to like keep continuously talking, and I don't want to waste none of y'all time if you didn't hear about the Mercury sign I have prior. But thank you each and every one of y'all for showing up. Thank you for spending some time with me today. Please make sure that you tap into the Mercury mini reading thing. I see a few of y'all ended up coming through and pulling up for that. I want to kind of just honor more of the like mini reading vibe and seeing what other people are feeling with that as well. And obviously, I always offer my full chart readings, which I would suggest to literally anyone. Doesn't matter where you come from. Doesn't matter how much astrology you know. You're going to leave knowing what's going on. So, question. When learning and teaching astrology, do you, tropical. I'm a tropical astrologer. I'm a tropical astrologer. I use Placidus as my house system. Whole sign is cool. I'm a tropical astrologer. My last thing to say about that. A lot of people will sit there and they will be like, hey, why do you not pay attention to the constellations? They moved. The constellations moved. And I have one thing to say. In tropical astrology, when the constellations at the time were there, they named the spaces of the sky and the sections that they talked about after the constellations that were there at the time. They weren't talking about the actual constellation. They're just like, oh, this space and area, we're going to call it that because that's there right now. Those people passed on. Time goes by. Those spaces and that pizza wheel that exists in the sky, still the same slice. But the constellations moved. The toppings moved a little bit. When you brought that pizza home, and the pizza just, you had the pizza and it's really hot, and you move real quick, or the car hits a little swerve, and then all the cheese and the pepperoni or whatever toppings you had, they just kind of like go on to the next slice a little bit. That's what happened. But you want to know what? It's the same slice of pizza. And so here's where I say in terms of things, like that's just the take on tropical astrology. Now, granted, there's some excellent astrologers of all regards, but certain people get very up in arms about their system, and that's okay. I do tropical. I use Placidus. I get very specific with it. Sometimes I use whole sign when I talk about transits. Intrinsically, I had a conversation with someone in a reading earlier today about that. I do use whole signs just like in a basis to kind of give the general thing. But when I do actual chart stuff, and if I have a chart, I'm always going to be using Placidus. I tried out every one of them, like all of them. I tried out a lot of them for a long time, and yeah. So I guess the pizza analogy of how that is the way that I like to kind of see that. So like same space in the sky, same vibe. If we just called it Firehouse 1, people would be like, oh, but Aries is over there. And it would be, Anyway, aside from that, in that jargon, I appreciate y'all for pulling through. Thank you. Let me stop talking now and let me start to head out and figure out the rest of my evening, and I suggest you all do the same as well. I appreciate each and every one of you showing up for my Mercury Masterclass on this Mercury day, on this Sun in Gemini and Moon in Virgo, and I believe we're not ending our Mercury hour. That would have been cool though. But I do appreciate y'all. Much love, and I'll be seeing y'all next week for the full moon, whatever moon's coming up. I have it scheduled already. I've been thinking too much. I talk a lot of stuff. Okay. Anyway, stay beautiful. Have a great one. Until next time, much love. Peace.